Hey guys, today we're going to do a little demo on how to use html5 database, local database. This is a little different than local storage. It's a full-fledged relational database, just like you would find on the web, except it's local to your phone, so everything's stored locally. We're going to, in this lecture, initialize a database, start a database, insert into a database, and then query a database for a list view. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is open up your Notepad++, and I'm going to get it real big, and let's throw in our HTML tags. And let's make this a little smaller, there we go. And let's close our HTML. Okay, and let's create our head and our body tags. Okay, and for this exercise only, I'm just going to put inline style tags so we don't have to create an extra document, because this is based more on data more than it is style. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a script tag in the head, and this is different than our main scripts from when we call scripts inside our app during the app. This is for startup, so this goes in the head, not in the body. If you've programmed in Java for Android or Objective-C for iPhone before, this is going to look very familiar to you. Okay, so the first thing, I actually took most of this code from PhoneGap.com because this is part of their library. So I'm just going to tell you what things mean as I type along. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is call a variable called database, and we're going to make it null. What that does is just say, hey, we have a variable called database, and it initializes a variable. You don't need to know too much about it, just know that you have to put it so your database can start up. Okay, and then after that, hold on one second. Okay, so we're going to create our database. So we're going to say var db equals open database, and now we're going to call our database to do, and to do is our database name 1.0, which is the standard version that we use for phones. And our table name, we're going to also call it to do, as we're going to make this a to-do list, so we'll just name them both the same. And this is 2 times 1024 bits times 1024 bits is just the size of the database, meaning that you'll never run out of rows in your phone. You'll more likely run out of memory and space before you run out of rows to write to on the database. Okay, so we're going to say db, which is our variable for our open database. So we're going to say, hey database, I want a transaction, and it's going to be a function of database, and we're going to say database execute SQL, and we're going to say in all caps create table if not exists. So we're going to say hey database, we want to create a table if not exists, meaning that if it's already there, we don't want to remake the table because it'll delete the old table but we need to make the table if this is the first time that this database is running. So we're just checking to see if it exists before we do make it. So we're going to say we want to make our table called tasks, and then we put in our fields. If you have done MySQL before, you're going to be pretty familiar about what's going on. So I'm going to say I want ID, integer, not null primary key, and I want auto increment. And the reason why I want auto increment our ID is because we want something that is unique. So if we want to, let's say, get more information from that item, or I want to delete that row, I know that I'll always have a unique value in the database that I could reference if I want to delete that row. And hold on one second, I'm actually just going to save this as. Okay. And we want to create unique name, name, description, and do as our date time field, and we're going to close, and make sure that everything's in parentheses, otherwise you'll have a problem. So as you see, the parentheses go before the second, the single quotations go before the second parentheses, and we're going to create our table, our ID, which is unique, and then our name, description, and date time. So we'll have 4 fields. Okay. And that will create our database, and I'm going to close our function. Okay, so if you open Chrome, just open the Chrome browser, right click and inspect element, and click the resources tab, go to where it says web SQL, and then you should see your to-do table in your SQL in the database. Okay, and that would be one of our tables from our to-do is our database, and we don't have tasks in here, so that means there is an issue. Actually, I'm sorry, I didn't run the script yet, but we do have the database. So it did open the database, and let's run the script. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a script that checks to see if anything is in our tasks table, and if not, it's going to say we're going to make an alert and say, hey, we're not here, and if it is, it'll give us what we do have here. So the first thing actually we're going to do is we're going to link jQuery, so let's and I'm going to look for jQuery on and I have it in local. And the good way to check it, if everything is linked correctly, is if you go to your console. Oh, and I obviously made a syntax error. So where did I make a syntax error? Oh, and I put my script inside a script tag, so that's a problem. Okay, so now everything's okay and I'm linked okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a document.ready function. Okay, and we're going to say we're going to open our database again. And actually, we could just copy and paste from before because it's the same exact thing. And we're just opening our. We're not anymore opening our database. We're just referencing the instance of it, meaning saying this is the database we are targeting is our to-do database. Since it's already open, we're just trying to refer to it in our transaction. Okay, so we're going to and we're going to do another db transaction function. So we're just going to copy and paste again, and we want to execute an SQL statement. We're going to say tx.execute SQL, and we're going to select, and we're going to say star, which is everything. So select everything, which is right now we have our ID, our created, our name, description, and due date, due. So we're gonna, the star says get all these rows from tasks, and then this puts them into an array, and I'll show you how to get that in a second. And query success, which is a function called if there is a success on the query or an error, which is part of the PhoneGap spec. They just let you I'm sorry, and don't forget the single quotes. They just let you know whether the queries was a success or not, so you can let the user know and for your own testing. Okay, so we want everything from tasks, and and then we're going to say if it's success, we're going to call query success. If it was an error, we're going to call error CB. And then we're going to say on success function. And don't forget to close your functions. Okay, and then we're going to call our function query success. Okay, so it's saying function query success, and this is calling our database, and these are the results from, or the results of rows from the database. And then we're going to make a variable called variable len, which we're going to make the length, which will be results, how many the results rows of rows, and how many rows we have. So we're going to make our if function. We're going to say if len is greater than 0, we're going to do something, and if it's not, if it is 0, I want to say alert, you have no tasks. Okay, and we're going to leave this empty because right now we don't have any tasks. so we'll just leave that empty for the time being. And now let's call our error function, because if we don't put our error function in, no scripts will run, because JavaScript is looking for it here, and then it's going to say, well, this function doesn't exist, and it'll just stop running any scripts on the entire page. Okay, so we're going to say function error cb and error, which is our error message from html5, and we're going to alert error. And you could alert just for the heck of it, which is the HTML5 spec. It'll just give you the error code. Okay, so let's save and run. Let's see what we get. And we get nothing, so there was an error. Okay, it says query to success, not defined, and I must have spelled something incorrectly. Which I did. And I'm sorry, I made a typo, which didn't let me query, so let's run it, and it says error undefined. So there was an error in our script, and just give me 1 second. Okay, and there is an error. If you just go back to the top of your page, you can't have a space in between tasks and ID, because if I do, let's save it here. Oh, well, I had the space here before, and it wasn't letting me run my queries, and I took away the space, and now it's okay. So just make sure you don't have any spaces in between tasks and ID in your create table query, otherwise it won't create the table. And now we have our to-do list. Okay, so I'm gonna actually just refresh, and we have our tasks table, and don't worry about our SQL-lite sequence, that's just a default. So you'll see that you have a tasks table, but it's empty as of right now. Okay, so as of right now, we're just saying, hey, your variable called database, and we're going to open up the instance of the database. We're going to create the table of tasks if we don't exist, and on document.ready, we're going to open up our database and say, select from tasks, is there any tasks? If there's not any tasks, in our if function, so if the amount of rows in our database are greater than 0, we're going to wind up putting that into a list view. But right now, since they're not, it's else, and we have no tasks because our length is not greater than 0, which means that it is 0. Okay, so as of right now, we could open and query our database. Again, you could query your database from anywhere in your application. Just use this line of code here, from error up to opening up your database, and you could wrap that in your function, and then you're going to be able to append all the items to your list. Okay, so the next, now we're done with our document.ready function, and we're going to create a form. Okay, and let's put script tags here on the bottom of our document. Okay, and let's first, we're just going to make a simple form. Actually, we're just going to make very quickly input type equals text, ID equals task name, placeholder equals task name, and this is next week going to go into our app, and we are going to completely finish our app next week. So I just want to get you guys used to the idea of HTML5 database before we throw it into that big project, because it's already pretty lengthy and it's very easy to get lost. So we're going, and then our next input will be input type. We're going to do a text area. ID equals description, or task description, placeholder task description, and we're going to close our text area. Okay, and then our input type of date due. Input type equals text for right now, because we're going to use a plugin to get a native widget to pick the date and time. So because we don't want users to put in something stupid for date because maybe they don't know how to format a date, or they misspell. We need the dates to be perfect. So we're going to use a widget, but for now let's just put text, and ID equals our due date, and placeholder due date. Okay, and now we have input type equals button, ID equals submit task, value equals add task. Okay, so let's save, and let's get rid of our alert, and I'll show you a better way to see if things work. We're going to use console.log, and when you go to console, you should see it says you have no tasks, and that would be just like programming in a regular desktop language. It's much better and less unobtrusive than alerts. Okay, so, and I made an error on my text area. So now we'll have our text area. Okay, so we're going to, just like our local storage, we're going to get the values of each of these inputs. So let's say submit task dot click function, and we are going to make our variables. Variable name equals task name dot val, and we are going to get our name length, which is going to be task name dot val dot length. And what this does is gets how many characters are in our task name, because I don't want my task name to be empty. So before we let a user submit to our our database, I'm going to make them put a name for their task name, and I'm going to make it at least 4. So I'm going to show you how to do that via a if statement. Okay, so then now we want our variable description equals task description dot val, and variable due date, and that's our due date dot val. Okay, and I'm going to say if name len is greater than 4, so I want them to have at least 4 characters in their task name. Then I'm going to let them submit. Else, if it's not, alert, your task name must have 4 characters. And we're going to try that out. So let's try it. And as you can see, I have nothing there, so it must have 4. So let's put 3. And it'll still happen. And greater than or equal to 4. And now let's try 1, 2, 3, 4, and nothing happens because our condition is met. So how do we save to a database? This is a little tricky. This actually took me a lot of time of just a lot of trial and error myself. But in the end, let me get to it. Okay, so we're going to use a function from the MySQL html5 spec called function populate db, and tx stands for just the pseudonym for the database. So we're going to say tx dot execute SQL, and they want you to call the instance again just to make sure if it didn't get initialized before. So it's going to say create table if not exists. Task. Actually, I'm just going to take this from up top. We don't have to type it again. And copy and paste. Okay. And so if we do have the table, or if it is created there, right afterwards, it's going to say tx execute SQL insert into tasks and created name description and do, and it's going to say what values do we want. Okay, so here is where it got tricky, even for me. It took me a little while to figure this out because there's very little documentation on HTML5 database. So what you have to do is, if you're going to use variables, you're going to have to put question marks for every single one of them. Since we have 4, we're going to put 4 question marks, and we're going to close our query, and then in this is called an array, which an array is just a bunch of strings and wrapped in one object within these braces. So then we're going to create a created variable, and then we have our name variable, description variable, and our when, which is our date. And we'll close our function over here, and I'm sorry, let's change when to due date. Okay. So we should have our insert statement, insert into tasks, what fields we have, and don't forget the order in which you make your rows. So created. If you put a different variable here first, if you put name, your name will go into the created instead of created. So make sure that you know that that they run sequentially. So you need to put your rows and your variables sequentially when you make your insert query. Okay, and let's make our created variable var created equals, and we're going to call a function called now, which is jQuery's time date. Okay. And then we are going to I'm sorry, we're going to close our function here, and what we're going to do is call our function error CB, which is the error of this function, of our insert function, I'm sorry, and we're just going to alert error, and function success CB alert success. Okay, and we're going to try and see what happens. And I must have done something weird. Okay. Oh. And let's see. Okay, and after we put in those after we try to insert our query, we're going to then, let's go to the top again, let's get our instance, and we're going to create our variable DB again, and then we're going to say database.transaction, and we're going to call our functions in succession. So we're going to say DB transaction, and then it'll try to do our population. If not, it'll give us an error. If not, it'll give us our success. Okay, so we have our error and success, and let's save. And if you open up your HTML document, and we're going to put just some random values, it's going to say success. And let's go to our resources, to our to-do list and our task list, and we'll have our auto increment IDs, our created, which is our just time, jQuery time, the name of our task, the description of our task, and just random when it's due. And we're going to use a cool widget for that to make people not be able to put in their own stuff. Okay, so I just wanted to show you quickly of how the database worked, and now you should be able to insert into your database, and we'll be able to put that into a row. So actually, let's do that now. Okay, so we're going to let's make a div called list above our scripts. Div ID equals list. Okay, and div. So in our document.ready function, where are we? Okay, and in our so for our length over here in our query success function, we are going to say list dot append. So we're going to append our list div with an li and plus, now this is where our variables are. We're going to say results dot rows dot item I, which is the row number, and dot ID plus name plus results dot rows dot item I dot name, and then we'll say plus description plus results dot rows dot item I dot description, and plus, and now we're going to close our li, and let's close our function. And now for every row that we have, we have to make a while loop, which is for every row that's found. So we're going to say for I equals 0, and if you have ever taken any programming language before, you'll know that loops are pretty much the basis of programming. Okay, and I will tell you what this means in a second. Okay, and we're going to wrap that in right here. So it's saying it's going to say variable I equals 0. Now while I is less than length, so while I is less than the length of how many rows are left, keep incrementing I. This is plus, so it's going to say go 1, 2, 3, 4 until 0 rows are left, and then it'll stop looping, asking for rows because there's 0 rows left to bring back into our HTML document. So it's saying while 0 is less than the amount of rows that are left, please keep getting the rows until the amount of rows that are left to get are 0. Okay, so that is pretty much the basis of a loop. And I have a syntax error. That's nice. So let's see. And let me just check this real quick. don't think that's the problem, but no, it's not. Okay. I is less than length. Keep it I. And at the end of my script, I forgot to add a double quotes. That was probably the problem. Oh, that was the problem. And as you can see, now this is my ID. This is the name. And our description is, they're all gargled up, but they're there. And you can make them into a pretty list, separate them, put them into different spans. Let's just put some BRs. Will that actually give me a string though? No. So, okay. I'm just gonna break a line so you guys can see the separation. And as you can see, here's our ID, here's our name, which is FFEWF, and our description is F, and here's the same. So that's how you get, pretty much make a local database, and you could just check it in your to-do database and your task table. Okay, so that is how you make a local database. Very important to making any application. So if you have any questions, please ask me. If you're making any applications that require a local database, which most of you are, please contact me. Thank you.